Monisha, can you turn your camera on? Monisha ji, Pramod ji, can you turn on your cameras? Yes, 1 minute, please. Okay. Thank you.
नमस्कार ज्योति जी.
नमस्ते. हाय. असंच आपण भेटतो बहुतेक.
Rubena, we have around 26 participants now, and we're hoping we'll just give it 1 more minute before we can start, yeah? But we can start now. Rubena, we can begin, yeah?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is our first stakeholder consultation for the Mumbai Climate Action Plan. I really appreciate the time and acceptance for the panelists who have agreed to speak today on the consultation. It was as we plan this kind of series, so we are since this is the first consultation, I'll just say that we are at a point where we've completed some parts of our analysis for the climate action plan. We finished our greenhouse gas inventory, and we finished the vulnerability assessment, and we have just begun we have just begun the sort of action planning process, where we are sort of thinking about where we are beginning to develop the models for forecasting, and how we can start setting up some of these targets for the short term, medium term, and the long term. And this is our first consultation to essentially reach out to experts in the field to kind of share your knowledge, your expertise, and integrate some of the work that you all have been doing in this process, so that because in climate action, in the space of climate action, it's not that we haven't been doing anything, right? These are the sectors that for years all of you all have been working in for years in these sectors, and the idea is to sort of open this space out for collaboration and bring in kind of understand also the limitations of our process. So please feel free to flag what kinds of limitations you see. If there are data gaps, please do help us identify some of that. And this is really a more of an open sort of initial conversation. So with that, I'm just going to also the limitation of doing this online is we also want to not have very lengthy sessions. So we decided to have a sort of an in-between space where have you guys all as speakers to share your findings, but we unfortunately will not have the time to do a very robust Q&A session at the end, where speakers who are not part of the panelists will not be able to share your inputs in this in this consultation, but we are going to be sharing repeatedly in the chat the website where we really want written feedback. Because we are keen on integrating a lot of the written feedback into the action planning process. So it's not an ideal kind of situation. We understand the limitations, but really hoping to have a good conversation today with you all. So with this, I'm going to introduce my colleague Avni Agarwal, who's been the expert working on the solid waste management action track. And she's going to share some of our early sort of our initial analysis with you all. And then we'll have this panel of we'll have a panel of expert speakers who will then share their feedback on specific aspects of solid waste management. So thank you very much. Over to you, Avni.
Hi. Hi. Yeah, I hope I'm audible. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Avni Agarwal, and I work with the climate program at Dabrase, India. And I will be giving a brief introduction on solid waste management in Mumbai, which will be followed by, as Rubana said, a round of comments from our speakers, who will highlight some key challenges and suggest solutions to overcome these challenges. And again, as Rubana said, we will not have time to take everyone's inputs and address all questions, as this will be an hour-long consultation. So please do share your suggestions and feedback in the chat window here or on the Mumbai Climate Action Plan's official website. The website also has a dedicated Talk to Us page where you can write or upload your suggestions, and we'll post the link to that page in the chat box. So just to get to some basics about waste in Mumbai. So MCGM on average manages about 6,800 tons of municipal solid waste per day, and organic wet waste makes up over 72.6% of it, followed by sandstone and fine earth. Okay. On the screen.
Avni, you may want to change your presentation screen. We're not able to see the PPT.
I'm sorry, just give me a moment. There is a technical issue. Just stop share and reshare. I can't just share the screen. Can you share it?
Sorry, we are having some kind of a technical issue with the screen being stuck. Could be an internet.
Yeah, we can see the PPT now. Thanks.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Yeah, really sorry about that. So as I was saying, MCGM on average manages about 6,800 tons of municipal solid waste per day, and organic wet waste makes up over 72.6% of it, followed by sandstone and fine earth at 17.37%, wooden cloth at 3.51%, paper and other recyclables such as metals at 3.28%, and plastic at 3.24%. According to our estimate, waste sector is responsible for about 7% of Mumbai's total emissions, which is about 1.8 million tons of CO2e. Mumbai currently has 3 dump sites represented as the 3 red pentagons on your screen on the map, one each in Deonar, Mulund, and Kanjurmarg. There used to be a dump site at Gorai, which was scientifically closed in 2009. So 75 to 80% of Mumbai's waste currently is treated at Kanjurmarg, a 5-year-old disposal site using bioreactor technology and windrow composting. And the rest is disposed of at the Deonar site, which has been in use for 88 years. The Deonar site is the oldest dumping ground in the city and has almost exhausted its capacity to receive more garbage. And BMC has been planning closure of the Deonar site since 2005. Meanwhile, the 24-year-old Mulund dump site stopped receiving waste in 2019 and is currently under remediation. So with the implementation of the solid waste management rules in 2016, the implementation of the solid waste management rules of 2016 encouraged source level segregation and treatment, and we see a decrease in waste that is managed centrally over the years in Mumbai. MCGM has also mandated that all bulk generators of solid waste provide treatment at source. So we see there has been a 35% decrease in waste generated reported by MCGM in the last 5 years. Just to sort of highlight some of the initiatives that MCGM is undertaking and prioritizing to reduce, recycle, and recover waste and restore dump sites. I'll only mention a few. So in terms of reducing waste, BMC is currently developing a city-level solid waste management plan, which is where there's emphasis on decentralization, and it has launched an online citizen survey also under its 2030 initiative. To encourage segregation on composting at source, 5 to 10% property tax relief is provided to societies engaged in waste segregation and composting. Organic waste converters are being proposed in vegetable and fruit markets across Mumbai to treat organic wet waste that is generated at these markets. As mentioned earlier, the Mulund dump site is under reclamation, is under remediation, and the contractor has been able to process 114,000 metric tons of legacy waste so far. In terms of waste recovery, MCGM has been allotted 85 hectares of land to set up scientific waste processing facilities. MCGM is also setting up 4 new dry waste sorting centers, and waste pickers have been appointed to carry out collection and segregation. There are some, in our analysis here, we've tried to highlight a few gaps that we see across policy and planning, institutional capacity, investments, and information to restore, reduce, and recycle. For example, under restoration, technology plays an essential role. So the work would need to be supported through making technology available and hiring of suitable contractors. In terms of reducing waste, an integrated city-level waste management plan can help with decentralizing and strategizing at the ward level. In terms of recycling, there is a need for greater community engagement and integration of informal waste pickers into the solid waste management system. Our approach for this sector is to follow the sustainable waste management hierarchy, which has also been highlighted in the Municipal Solid Waste Management Manual published by MOHUA. So at-source reduction and reuse is at the top of the hierarchy and the most preferred way of managing waste through waste minimization and sustainable use and multi-use of products. For example, reusing carry bags or packaging jars. These are simple examples. At the second level is recycling, which is the second most preferred way, which entails processing of non-biodegradable waste to recover commercially valuable materials such as plastic, paper, metal, glass, electronic waste, recycling. At the third level is composting, which is our next preference to process biodegradable waste to recover valuable compost through vermicomposting, windrow composting, in-vessel composting, and so on. Waste to energy is at the fourth stage of preference, wherein we can recover energy before the final disposal of waste. This would include refused derived fuel, producing refused derived fuel, undertaking biomethanation, so on and so forth. And landfills are at the bottom of the hierarchy and the least preferred way of managing solid waste, as it generates the least amount of value. So based on this approach, we have identified some key areas and strategies, which include having a decentralized waste management system, promoting scientific disposal and remediation through segregation at source, recycling, composting, and creating an information dashboard on waste, which would include ward level data, location of community composting and collection sites, so on and so forth. So I'd like to stop here, and of course, this is just, this list is not at all exhaustive, and we are here to sort of take inputs from the experts on the panel. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much, Avni. Thank you so much, Avni. So with this, we'd actually like to open the panel for discussion and comments from our speakers today. I would want to first call upon Ms. Swati Sambyal from UN Habitat, who's a waste management expert, and will speak to the need for decentralization and what kinds of policy recommendations we need to sort of integrate into the plan.
Thanks, Lubena, and everyone from WRI and Vatavaran for having me for such a pertinent discussion. I would really like to acknowledge the group for the work that you all have put in, and also for getting us all together to share our inputs. I would just, considering the concerns are already highlighted, I would just like to share like a 7-step roadmap that could be adopted and integrated as a part of the Mumbai Climate Action Plan. First, of course, a need for detailed data inventorization and assessment. I was looking at the figures that Avni was sharing and on the waste composition, and I feel that most of our cities do composition assessment and studies on the landfill side, and it's not like a detailed and thorough inventorization that is often conducted, also keeping into mind the vast income groups that are there, low, middle, and high. So of course, first step of action could be to understand, the existing waste characterization and consumption patterns of high, middle, and low income groups, to prepare an effective and implementable strategy and action plan, which could be, sort of put to ground. UN Habitat did this intervention in Mangaluru as a pilot, wherein we had prepared this waste by cities tool, which allows cities to do a thorough inventorization, and also based on those data is able to estimate, what are the leakages, what action plan could be implemented, and what further steps could be taken to have more circular interventions in the city. And we had some stark findings. So clearly, when I see that plastic generation is only 3%, I think it's much more. Even during the times that we're living in, most of the cities are reporting like an increase in plastic waste, somewhere between 15 to 20%. So clearly, number one, we need thorough inventorization and assessment in order to have an effective plan. Next is, of course, mainstreaming segregation, and there could be various incentives and various programs that could be undertaken as a part of it. One, of course, is focusing on behavior change. I think awareness is one aspect, but has that awareness led to a behavior change is more important. So not intermittent awareness activities, but continuous plans, on how behavior change, could be led, which would further lead to mainstreaming segregation on the ground, because it can't be optional anymore. It has to happen right from generator to bulk generators, residential or commercial sources. So one definitely could be having price incentives in place to promote segregation, or also having, some minimization policies in place. You already have a concession on property tax for households that segregate, or for households that are going a step ahead in composting or managing waste at source. But this could be further, ramped up into the action plan and integrated. For instance, Panji in Goa is something amazing. It has a shop with your waste campaign, which ensures not only at source segregation, but also ensures that there is an incentive to the recycler, to the grocery center, and of course, there's a clean, dry resource stream. This would further help also in interventions like plastic waste management or EPR by companies. The third element could be effective collection and transportation. Also CNT to strengthen segregation end to end, which means that we need to scale up collection processes in our cities, need to ramp up infrastructure so that there is collection of segregated waste, and there are various ways to do it. One is to maximize on route optimization, and cities normally don't focus it. Also developing systems to ensure waste traceability, which is usually not there. And also to monitor the progress in waste segregation, waste collection, how much percentage of segregated waste is collected, how much percentage is processed, is somewhere that we could focus on. Vijayawada, I could share as an example that has done some exemplary work in optimizing collection and transportation by developing an online waste management system. I could share their portal and it could definitely be explored, because not only it tracks the waste streams and not only it tracks, the collection system, but it also sort of monitors how much of it is going where. There's also a grievance and call center and addressal system, which ensures that any kind of grievances that are there, they are addressed from time to time. So we need like a dedicated cell to optimize CNT in cities. Fourth is, to set up resource recovery systems. Of course, for Mumbai, and considering the waste generation, about 6,800 TPD, you can't have a 100% decentralized system. So here we could focus on a hybrid system, which is part decentralized, part centralized, but clearly a robust plan to phase out on the existing, disposal centric system and changing the gas to a more resource recovery system is important. So one is to create decentralized infrastructure. It could definitely be done at household level, at society level, at commercial centers, which I could see is definitely there in the plans. And ULBs could encourage generators, to treat wet waste at source. I know it's already happening, but I think this needs to be further incentivized. Within Mumbai, it's been done in Mengurla, it's been done in Panchgani, so that it's been done in Pune. So there are already examples of some cities that have explored with decentralizing the system, and I'm sure that could be replicated. Another important aspect could be creating market linkages for compost, and a few cities have explored with this. One is Vadodara in Gujarat. In a few societies in Bangalore as well, there is a system to procure compost and give coupons that could then be utilized at various milk outlets or suffle booths. Or another option could be providing composting as a service. This has been explored in Bangalore, where if I as a household not want to compost, there would be a service provider who will take care of composting at household level, will do everything for me, which means then I'll pay this vendor like a monthly fee of about 200 to 250 rupees to manage my wet waste. So I think composting as a service could also be explored by private vendors. It's already in place in Bangalore, and definitely this model could be studied in detail. Additionally, when we look at the municipal corporation sites, most of the times details of vendors or technology providers, it's not easily accessible to a layman or to various stakeholders, or for that matter to bulk generator. So I think a detailed assessment of who are the existing vendors or technology providers or aggregators or scrap dealers. It could be assimilated and put up on the corporation's portal, and should be accessible to everyone, so that if today I want to explore with something, I want to set up a composting system or a biogas plant in my colony or in a commercial area, I have that information readily accessible to me. Another, in terms of technologies, of course, the bigger question is, and of course was clearly highlighted by Avni, that we don't want to give much more emphasis to waste to energy or landfilling. These should be the last options. Also, typically, when you look at the feasibility of waste to energy plants in our cities, for a city like Mumbai, we are looking at non-recyclable, high calorific value waste, which is not beyond 10 to 15% of the waste that the city generates. I'll take another 1 minute.
Sorry, you're like, already at 10 minutes.
Yeah.
You can
so
in 30 seconds, just wrap up, please.
Yeah, sure. So clearly, disposal and incineration-centric options shouldn't be focused. There should be as much emphasis that we could do on decentralized options, and these could be explored. And the last bit would be, engagement and awareness, which of course is important. Integration of informal sector. We could look into Ambikapur model of how they've done it. We could look into the Kerala model. We could look into the Panji model. So there are quite a few models that are there which focus on inclusion of informal sector. And last is setting up of policies that are circular and resource efficient in place, which means revamping our local bylaws or SWM action plans into more circular, bylaws that focus on closing the loop over, being centric towards collection or disposal and, the general system that has been always there. So the last bit is we need to have policy integration for promoting sustainable circular system, as a part of this action plan. So yeah, thanks. 5 minutes is never enough, but
Thank you. Thanks so much, Swati. That has really been very, very comprehensive. I'd like to now call upon Ma'am Jyoti Mhapsekar ji, who represents Stree Mukti Sanghatana, to talk exactly what you were talking about, Swati, the formalization of the informal sector and some of the recommendations that Mumbai could really learn from.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me for this very important webinar. And I feel that my organization and Parisar Bhagini Vikas Sangha, which is waste speakers organization, are representing waste speakers who are actually a silent force, silent working force in this city, ignored by everyone. And there are so many rules have been made in 2016 also. Swachh Bharat Mission is there. New rules are coming under Swachh Bharat Mission, but there is no implementation. And whether this implementation, there is no authority to do implementation and to observe whether the action plan has been taken up by local bodies. Wards also, at the ward level also. It is not only at the central level, but also at the ward levels. Many times we find that the officers in the ward, they just do not know what are the policies at the top level. And so I think that this should be avoided, and written rules should be there. Earlier they were there. In 2003, there were guidelines. 2012, also Maharashtra state has given guidelines, their own state guidelines. Mumbai Municipal Corporation has, I remember, a very small booklet. But now, after this 2016, now even 5 years have been passed, but there are no guidelines. And these guidelines for involvement of all the stakeholders should be there. Otherwise, who are you? When we go, we are just asked this question: who are you? Why we should give you? So if there are recommendations for mainstreaming of best speakers, then that should be actually followed by up to the ward level also. For this, for the decentralization or work and mainstreaming of waste speakers, Pune is the best example in Maharashtra, where they have involved all the waste speakers, cooperative society in the whole waste management policy, and the waste speakers only do door-to-door collection, and then they collect dry waste and wet waste is sent to municipality. We at many places in Sanghatana, many places from 10,000 houses in Anushakti Nagar or small buildings somewhere else in other wards, we are doing complete composting of their waste and making it zero waste. At present, we are collecting dry waste also. And there are biogas plants. So this example in Mumbai is also sufficient to find out what is decentralized waste management. I feel that the first step is registration of waste speakers and issuing them identity cards. But unfortunately, what happened is that, fortunately, what happened now, nobody was ready to give. But now Supreme Court has given guidelines and the e-portal has started for all unorganized workers. So waste speakers also will be registered now. That's the one big hurdle was taken away. I feel that the data you have given, there are lots of flaws into that. What I see, 3% plastic was the data published by NERI in 1995. Even in their 2011 data also, they have given plastic as a 7.89. And after that, so many years have been passed, it is quite increased. I would like to suggest that many organizations like us are doing decentralized waste management. We have dry waste centers, spaces given by municipal corporation, and small zero waste projects. So you should see our data also, because it is more the ground level data, and that data also should be examined by you, and not the only general big data, which is a lot of flaws. Another thing I feel is that earlier, even the state level, there was a committee for looking after the waste management. So in a way, all the stakeholders should be involved in a review, and review meeting should be taken after this climate action plan has been formalized. And then whatever problems we face, we must have a stage or platform to talk about our problems. I also feel that this is a very short time, 5 minutes. We cannot tackle all these problems, or we cannot even talk about all the problems. So there should be further discussions. Yeah. Hello. Yeah. And another thing is there is also segregation at source is very important. A city like Mumbai, which is so modern, people putting their hands in someone else's waste is really shameful. And we should see to it that all human beings are treated equally, not only waste speakers, but also municipal workers. And the people must segregate their waste at source, and municipality should be very strict about it. And also for that, there should be a political will. With just NGOs going door to door and asking people, it won't work. So there should be a political will, and also there should be a carrot and stick approach by municipal corporation to do that. If you train waste speakers, actually they are already helping environment to reduce the emissions. But if we train waste speakers in fine sorting, in composting, that which we are already done in composting, dry waste sorting, and in biomethanation also, and creating home compost baskets or creating pits, very good pits, which can be put into the compounds of the societies, bulk generators, and it should be made compulsory to compose. I mean, there is a rule, but there is no implementation again. So this way, if we really go, I don't think the decentralized waste management will be definitely give a lot of opportunities to waste speakers also, and also to the sweepers who are, so many thousands of people are working. As for the World Bank, this thing, 1% of population works in waste. So all these people, if they have been given, if clean waste is given to them, their life, their health also will be better. And for that, you have to make it compulsory for citizens, and look after the training of waste speakers, giving them preference. Otherwise, there is a tender system, and all private contractors are going out and they are throwing waste speakers out. So, yes. So waste speakers are starving now. Actually, with the COVID, people have forgotten to segregate their waste. They are putting all mixed waste. We are not even talking about hazardous waste here, domestic hazardous waste.
Yeah,
so
that will be covered.
Yeah.
If you can just conclude your...
Yes, I have given my recommendation that there should be a committee, then for stakeholders, then also there should be decentralized waste management. You should involve waste speakers in training and everything. And so that they will be useful to the, more useful to the society. They're already useful, but more value addition will be given to their work, which will be beneficial for the society and for their own families, for the children's education, their health, etc.
Yes, thank you. Thanks so much. With this, I'll call Mr. Kedar Sohoni, who's the founder of Green Communities Foundation, to talk about segregation at source in residential buildings. Thank you. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry, I jumped. I'm sorry. The next person we'll call upon is Ms. Monisha Narke, who will talk about segregation at source in commercial and institutional buildings, followed by Monisha ji, Mr. Kedar.
Yeah, thanks so much, Avni and Lubena and the whole Vatavaran Foundation team for having us here. It's really nice to hear Jyoti ji set the stage of the need for decentralized and the fact that segregation at source. So through my work in the last decade, we've worked with a lot of citizens at the front end. And basically, I think the report has given an overall structure of how to manage the waste decentralized, where we say 70% of the waste can be composted, which is 80% water that we are currently transporting. And if we can take that at source, then that would really reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, which is the aim of the Climate Action Plan. Now, why is that a challenge, right? Through my journey in Mumbai, we have good technologies, we have solutions, we know it can work, there are role models, but the acceptance or the commitment by the citizens is very laxadil. They don't really think that they need to do this. So I think at the policy, it's very, very important to get citizen participation, because they are the ones bringing in the waste. And therefore, they need to know the guidelines in the policy. Not much awareness is there on bulk generators mandated to do composting at source. So firstly, there should be an effort done to get maybe letters going out to all the secretaries of different societies, the committees, that to know that they are accountable for the waste. It's very easy. The waste gets picked up, and we found that even in the COVID times, which projects that were functioning and have composting solutions, it was because of the fear of opening up the waste or touching it because of masks and things like that, people had stopped composting and stopped the good work that they were already doing. So I think the way that we can help is a lot of recognition needs to be given to the ones that are doing good work, so they can stand out. Like every society or office or school which is doing decentralized waste management at source has to be recognized. Very little is done to motivate those, and then once they are recognized, so recognition can be in the form of visibility on the website, social media push. There's a lot of news that people like to be at. So if the government can give more recognition to people doing good work, I think this will motivate others. The main challenge we found is space. Because of lack of space, people are not able to set up systems. So there is a lot of terraces that are available. We do a lot of work on the terrace, and I think the permissions should be easily given, or government should ensure that space is kind of jointly worked out in complexes to enable this, because a lot of the times we get the feedback that we don't have permission to do it, we can't do it on the terrace, and these kind of sort of excuses come out. So I think if there is a sort of an understanding of where would be an ideal location for waste management in situ, sort of getting some maps done, some highlights done that space can be easily kind of brought in, that will be a big challenge that we find that can be. So I think mapping out some spaces which are like terraces or where generators or back spaces in the compounds are, they could be demarcated. A lot of the times now shed is not provided, so that if some incentives are given to set up a facility where there's a rain shed, protection for waste management to be done in situ, we could definitely get more people to adopt these solutions practically on ground. And there are a lot of already good projects. So if they get highlighted, definitely the neighboring complexes would get motivated. Also, I think the lack of standardization, as Jyoti ji said, it's very important that people segregate, but most of the time people are confused. And, from a 1 bin to move to a 3 bin at source, or even 7 bins in the complex, there's no color coding, there's no standardization. Where do masks go? How do you wrap a sanitary napkin? There should be more color coding, standardization, guidelines of what to do with which waste stream, because a lot of the times we do a lot of education, but then it doesn't fall through because it's not reinforced. So if you see it everywhere that the waste is managed, even if you go to a hotel, it's managed in the same way. If you go to a mall, it's managed in the same way. If you go at home, it's managed the same way. There is a recall. And I feel the lack of standardization at country level, where people have no standard policy on what is segregation, is very, very key to a sustainable decentralized waste management solution. So at policy level, if we come up with a standard guideline, what to do with which waste, how to wrap it, what could be a red mark, for especially the hazardous waste we don't have an answer for, which is non-recyclable. How should that be isolated? That way we can get wealth out of the other recyclable and compostable waste. Standardization and color coding, I think, is one thing that you can implement in the guideline. This would be a suggestion. And of course, as you reduce, more detail on reduce, I think the biggest success to the program will be if waste can be reduced with encouraging green alternatives, encouraging people to stop using bin liners. I mean, we have 30 bin liners per household. If that can be like banned and pushed down that, don't bag your waste as a campaign. Like, I think we need more campaigns to cut it down. So for reduce, this would be one idea, ban the bin liner kind of concept, which will help cut down these non-recyclable waste and kind of drive home the need for segregation. So these are some suggestions from the front end as citizens would be able to do, provided we set the guidelines, the policy in place. And I think what helped was the letters that the BMC sent out. I think if that can be redone at society level, people again get aware to start this at home level. Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. These are great suggestions. I also want to flag that, we are right now sitting at the BMC office, all of us, and the DMC environment, Mr. Dabrase is actually here also. So just want to kind of say that, all of this is possible only because BMC has shown great willingness to lead this conversation and to sort of open out for collaboration. So Sir will speak at the end of the discussion, but just wanted to say that none of this would have been possible without their willingness to be part of this process. I want to call upon Mr. Kedar Sohoni to speak next. He's the founder of the Green Communities Foundation, and he will focus specifically on residential buildings and segregation at source. Maybe building on some of the conversations that have already been, some of the recommendations already flagged. So if you can speak about, what more can societies do?
Absolutely. So a lot of good suggestions have already come from Swati, Jyoti, Monisha. First, and of course, thank you for inviting me for this. So like you said, I'll just highlight some of the things which have not already been spoken about. Swati spoke about behavior change. Now, I feel if you look at the last 1 year, the amount of behavior change that has happened in Mumbai because of COVID, I think there are more people who wear masks than those who segregate. Whereas the segregation campaign has been on for more than 20 years. So yes, behavior change can happen, but I think before that, the belief has to change that this is an important aspect. Waste management is important. So unless that belief changes in some way, I don't think behavior will change. Behavior will be the next thing that will change. So we have to figure out how will a belief in the residents change, that this is important. For example, today you can't imagine constructing an apartment without a toilet, right? It's an integral part of a house. But how many houses or how many communities have actually enough space allocated to waste management? I don't think that people have realized that this is an important aspect. It's almost like an afterthought. And with the same thing, I would say space allocation, even at the ward level. If you see, so according to me, there has to be, as a thumb rule, maybe 1 square foot per person allocated to waste management, be it at the home, community, or at the ward. Unless you have quantitative infrastructure parameters like this, like how much space is needed for waste management, unless we are able to quantify and therefore plan for it, we will never be able to do a good enough job, as far as waste management is concerned. So that's infrastructure, and infrastructure comes with other aspects of how will different types of waste be handled. So for example, how much space is needed for a dry waste center and so on, right? So, I mean, so space is one very critical part. Information, again, everyone spoke about three-way segregation. Most of the segregation charts talk about wet and dry waste, which is a very confusing thing for people. People don't understand that part. So that the other aspect is very few residents know that there are dry waste vehicles separate from the dumpers that come to a society. If you ask randomly, 100 people, most of them may not be aware that there are multiple vehicles that MCGM sends out. So even basic things like this is something which people are not aware of, like like we spoke about SOPs, right? So those SOPs in terms of, okay, if you are segregating in a particular way, what happens to each component of that waste? Unless residents are made aware of some of these things, it's very difficult to do implementation. A lot of suggestions, even on the chat, came for skill development and employing waste pickers. I just wanted to highlight one part. See, all societies have housekeeping and facility management agencies. Okay, now they already do part of the garbage process, right? Collection from households and so on. And there are literally hundreds of such agencies. But most of them are not familiar with concepts of segregation, on-site composting, and so on. So these organizations are already working with thousands of facilities or societies and corporations and so on. If they can be mandated, saying that, okay, none of their facilities should be non-waste compliant. And in fact, then they can hire some of these waste pickers locally for providing those additional services. So it will not just provide an add-on service to the society, but also provide livelihood to some of these waste pickers. And side-by-side skill development programs can, of course, be arranged. One last point on the incentives. Now, I may not be popular for saying that, but I don't know if continued incentives is a good idea, because it's very hard to implement a continuous property tax benefit. Facilitation, like Monisha mentioned, absolutely. So those who are doing some great work, they should definitely be put up and facilitated and so on. But continuous property tax benefits, I think it's practically difficult to implement. It's almost like saying every time you stop at a red light or a signal, and you should be given an incentive at the end of it. It's impractical. It's not just going to work out. And so, so I'm not very sure on the incentive part, but a lot of things on infrastructure, information, and implementation is what I think we should focus on. I think I will stop here. There are so many other things, but yeah.
Thank you. That was very succinct and well organized. Thank you for that intervention. With that, I will call upon our last speaker, Mr. Pramod Dabrase, from Director of the Center for Sustainable Environment and Development Initiatives, who will speak to us today about exactly the gap that we see in e-waste and hazardous waste in the city, and what are some strategies that we could put into place for handling this waste.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, all of you at WRI, Vatavaran, and entire team for making me part of this, I would say, a welcome initiative. The topic, I would say, is the least touched or spoken so far, e-waste and hazardous waste. Hazardous waste, we started talking for the first time, I think, when we came out with 2016 rules, solid waste management rules, wherein the word domestic hazardous waste was coined for the first time. And e-waste, we have rules for quite some time now, but the way both rules are implemented. I don't need to make a special reference or mention to it, but we are not in really in a good shape. We are not really in a good state, I would say. E-waste as well as hazardous waste, if you look at the overall solid waste management as an issue, as a family, these are the most, or I would say, the toughest nut. The most health impacts or the most dangerous or deadly health impacts which are caused mainly because of domestic hazardous waste and e-waste, because it has got so many chemicals which cannot, we don't even know their names properly, right? So I think it is good that we are speaking about it. And I'm sure BMC is following the 2016 rule and subsequent amendments. I would not agree to some of the speakers saying that we don't have policies. What we don't have is policies coming to the lowest possible level. We need to take these policies which are so well designed to the lowest possible level. BMC need to really make those bylaws which are required, to take at the lowest possible level, that is household level or generator or housing society or all generators who are generating this kind of waste. So the biggest challenge for me is the low knowledge about all this at almost all levels, at generation level, as well as the agencies who are supposed to be in charge of all this. So I think that is one critical gap we really need to address. Second key challenge for us, all of us is our preparedness. We need to ask this question, including BMC. Are we prepared to take up domestic hazardous waste, for instance, if community or societies start segregating it? I don't think so. We have adequate infrastructure provision to collect, transport, as well as to treat domestic hazardous waste. I think this is one of the most critical points, wherein you have infrastructural gaps at all levels, starting from the collection itself. When we ask housing society to segregate at source into 3 categories, for instance, one is wet, another is dry, and a third one is domestic hazardous waste. What kind of facilities we are providing them? What kind of facilitation we are doing? That is one question we need to ask. And fourth one, policy and implementation gap. As I said, policies are quite well designed, but I think there is a serious gap in the way we are implementing it. We have such a survection happening every year, and every city is running behind making them number 1. And in the process, we are really missing those very critical links of achieving the most critical, interventions or provisions or corrections that we need to really make. We are just trying to do those cosmetic surgeries, cosmetic looks, cosmetic whatever is required to make you number 1, 2, 3, right? So Mumbai, I'm sure, is one of the largest city in the country. It is not easy for Mumbai city like Mumbai to, handle all these issues. But at the same time, we have enough resources, we have finances, we have institutions who are really capable of doing all these things. And the fifth challenge I see is awareness. Awareness is spoken very loosely actually. But if you get into the depth of awareness part of all these issues, I think we are missing many links. We are missing many factors which are required to ensure that everyone is aware about what we are speaking about. Domestic hazardous waste as well as e-waste. E-waste, it has got so much, I would say, resource value. Domestic hazardous waste may not have that much resource value, but e-waste has so much resource value. Are we tapping that resource value? Are we in a position to replicate what is happening in slums like Dharavi? Many of those, what to say them, our friends, like kabadiwalas and all that, who are engaged in all these things, they are doing such a nice job. So I think Madam Swati spoke about institutionalizing these rack pickers and all such informal players who are playing big role. But my experience of working throughout the country on institutionalizing rack pickers and such information players is not very good. We are in a way limiting them in the way they were doing their job earlier. Dharavi is the classic case. Dharavi is looked at by many. It is kind of case study for all of us. We should really learn from what is happening in Dharavi and take those good elements, good factors, which can be replicated elsewhere in the city. Coming to recommendations, I think we need to really simplify, as I said earlier, we need to simplify this link between policy and practice. We need to bring those policy elements to the lowest possible level, the most decentralized level, that is maybe household or housing society. Even if you talk of housing society as a unit, it is not easy because within housing society, you have got those households. So I think we should think at household level and we should think what we can do to segregate e-waste as well as domestic hazardous waste at household level, right? And accordingly make provision, be it infrastructure, be it awareness, be it finances, be it facilitation. So all those kind of provisions we'll have to seriously make to ensure that whatever we are speaking, whatever we have suggested in the policies is recommended. Another most critical element or recommendation is how effectively we can implement this EPR, Extended Producer's Responsibility. It has got so much potential, but I still see that EPR is at all levels, I'm saying, at the manufacturer level, at producer level, at implementation, as a implementation level, and as a responsible authority at BMC level. There are gaps at every level, and we really have to understand how we can engage these startups, how we can engage NGOs, how we can engage community in ensuring that this EPR is implemented properly. Particularly for domestic hazardous waste and e-waste, this is one of the most critical elements which can to a large extent sort out our problems. You know, you must have learned about many companies like Samsung or iPhone or such electronic brands taking up, they have some kind of buyback kind of arrangement. But this has to be there for every product. We have to think about what will happen after its life is done. Then we have to, BMC I'm talking about, we have to allocate resources including financial, human. We have to train the stakeholders engaged in it so that they really understand the way we as sector players understand this. I see if you talk to common citizens, they don't really still have the clue about what are the adverse impact of domestic hazardous waste, how serious they can be, how are they linked to cancers, how they are linked to infertility, how they are linked to heart attacks, how they are linked to your neurological disorders and all that. So we have to really think in this perspective and take these messages to the citizens. Then I think I already spoke about creating infrastructure and providing hand-holding support to all the stakeholders engaging. I think the time given was very short, and there are so many things which I can talk about these two particular issues. But I think if we can do something with whatever is said. Another interesting thing I would like to tell, we have developed what is called a back to basics model for solid waste management, which talks about not just solid waste as a whole family, but all sub-families, including e-waste, including domestic hazardous waste, what kind of business potential it can have, who are the stakeholders needs to be engaged, how segregation can happen, you know, how this green protocol, so to say, can be, you know, translated from policy to city to ward to maybe housing society or generator level. Yeah. So all these things have to be, you know, taken as a package and given to the concerned authority. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I mean, and this has been absolutely. I mean, you all have been very generous with your with sharing your expertise and recommendations to the plan. I think there is clearly some things that emerge. You know, I mean, there is definitely a lot of data that we can get from the ground from many organizations who have been working at source or at community level, and there is definitely we do need to think about how to bring some of this data into the into our assessment, into the ways in which we can think about actions. There's clearly an emerging kind of thread across a lot of what you all have spoken about in terms of information that needs to be given out, having certain common kind of information palettes, just understanding your waste, I mean, what Mr. Kedar, what you spoke about, just knowing the different vehicles that deal with waste or the levels. I mean, I think there's a lot that we as citizens also need to sort of understand how do we understand our waste better, and that builds sort of a common kind of community sensibility. And that actually would really empower a lot of the behavioral change that you have been speaking about. A lot of recommendations in terms of space, in terms of what we can do at the sort of building level, what regulations can do to be able to kind of open out new land availability, etc. Those kinds of recommendations are also very well appreciated. So I think just to close, I mean, I would really highly appreciate if a lot of the if you could actually write up some of this, if there are reports that you all have put together, or if there is communication pieces that you all have developed, and this is for everyone in the audience also listening, please do share on the website, because we definitely would appreciate things that have already been done, and that can really speed up the process to take this to the ground and be able to kind of speed up our sort of planning process as well. I just want to also sort of hand over to Sunil Godseji. He is the DMC Environment, who is the nodal officer, the department that is leading the climate action plan from BMC. And sir will just sort of do closing comments.
Thank you so much to all the panelists and participants for all your recommendations and suggestions. This is the first time Mumbai is creating a climate action plan. So we want to listen to you and integrate your feedback into the plans. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Most welcome, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.